The wind had shifted strange that morning. Eli Morgan could smell it before he even saw the black on the horizon. Something old in his bones tightened, a scent like burned wood, scorched lace, and something else he couldn't name but knew meant pain. He was halfway down the east trail to check the fence line when his horse, Buck, stomped and snorted like he smelled it too. Eli slowed him with a low murmur, eyes narrowed toward the thin stream of smoke rising past the ridge. Whatever it was, it hadn't happened long ago. He wasn't the kind to poke into others' trouble unless it landed in his lap. Folks out here had a way of solving things quiet or burying them deeper. But this felt different. So he rode. The closer he got, the more the world seemed to hold its breath. No bird song, no cattle bawling, just the rhythm of Buck's hooves and the faint crackle of something still smoldering. Eli saw the wagon before he saw them, or what was left of it. The wooden frame lay tilted and blackened, half of it still smoking, charred ribbons of what used to be cloth fluttering in the breeze. A bouquet of white flowers, singed and crushed, lay in the dust nearby. Wedding flowers. The sight twisted something hard in Eli's gut. He dismounted slow, keeping one hand on his holster, the other on Buck's reins. Then the quiet cracked. A small voice, hoarse and low. "Stop there." Eli turned toward it and froze. A girl stood just a few yards from the wreckage, her hands shaking as she held a pistol so large it nearly swallowed both palms. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. Her cheeks were streaked with ash and something red. Her hair stuck to her face in sweaty tangles. She had the look of someone who'd already seen more than a grown man ought to. Behind her, 2 other girls crouched near a patch of scrub. One lay crumpled, her side soaked dark with blood. The other had wrapped her small body around the bleeding one like a shield. None of them had shoes. None of them spoke. Only the one with the pistol kept her eyes locked on Eli, jaw clenched tight enough to shake. "I ain't here to hurt you," Eli said, low and careful. He raised both hands. "Name's Eli. I live just over the ridge. You girls need help." "Go away," she said, but the gun dipped. Her arms were trembling. She looked like she hadn't slept in a day or more, maybe longer. The one hugging the injured girl looked up finally, just enough for Eli to see the tear tracks cutting through the grime on her face. "She's gonna die," she whispered. "Please." Eli stepped closer, slow like approaching a wounded animal. The girl with the gun didn't stop him. She just kept her grip on the handle, even as tears welled up and spilled over. When he reached the injured one, he crouched, checking the wound with a careful hand. It was bad. Lower ribs, deep gash, likely a broken bone beneath. Whatever hit her had done it clean through fabric and flesh. The girl was pale, lips slightly blue, breath shallow. She was barely holding on. Eli looked back at the other 2. "She needs a doctor. Right now." "She's our sister," the pistol girl said. "I figured," Eli replied, gently pulling off his coat to wrap the injured one tighter. "What happened here?" No one answered. The younger 2 looked down. The oldest, the one with the gun, stared off past him, eyes hard. "Do you have names?" he asked. "Lena," said the one with the pistol. "I'm Josie," the other whispered. "And she's May." "Well, Josie, Lena, May," Eli said, pulling his canteen from his saddlebag and handing it to Josie. "I need to get y'all back to my place. I'll send for the doctor. I've got food, water, blankets. You can rest. No one's gonna hurt you." Lena looked him over, not with the fear of a child, but the scrutiny of someone forced to grow up overnight. Finally, she lowered the gun, her arms shaking worse now that she wasn't using them to keep the weight up. "If you lie," she said, "I'll shoot you." "I believe it," Eli said softly, gathering May into his arms like a bundle of paper. She didn't even flinch. He rode slow, one girl in his arms, 2 riding double behind him, clinging to each other. They didn't speak the whole way, didn't cry either. The fire had already burned that out of them. Back at the ranch, Eli worked fast. He sent word with a stable hand, young Thomas, to fetch Doc Meeks and come fast. He laid May in his own bed, boiled water, cut clean strips from his oldest shirt. He kept his voice low, calm, while Lena paced the wall like a soldier, still gripping the empty pistol. Josie sat in the corner, arms wrapped around her knees, humming a tune Eli didn't recognize. The hours crawled. When Doc Meeks finally showed, Eli stepped outside to give him space. He stood on the porch, staring out at the hills, trying to make sense of it. 3 girls alone by a burned wedding wagon. A gun, blood, no parents, no adults, just fire and silence, and a pistol too big for a child's hand. When the doc came out, he looked tired. "She'll live," he said, "but it's a damn near miracle. Can you ask them what happened?" The doctor shook his head. "They won't say a word about it. Just said they ran." Kept repeating it. "Ran. From who? They wouldn't tell me." Eli nodded. He didn't need all the details. Not yet. He'd seen the look in Lena's eyes. Whoever left those girls to die hadn't done it by accident. Whatever they ran from wasn't done chasing them yet. Inside, Josie had fallen asleep at last, curled on a pile of quilts on the floor. Lena still sat stiffly by the door, the pistol on her lap, her chin resting on her knees. She didn't look up when Eli came in. Just said quietly, "You got locks on the doors?" "Yeah," Eli said, "and I got something better." "Me." She blinked slowly, finally letting her body lean just a little against the wall. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was something more than fear, something that might one day, if he was careful enough, start to feel like safety. Eli didn't sleep that night. He sat in a rocking chair by the window, shotgun across his lap, and listened to the wind. Somewhere out there, someone had tried to erase 3 little girls. Someone thought they'd done it right, but they didn't count on one of them knowing how to shoot, or the bleeding one still breathing, or the rancher whose trail just happened to run past the wreckage. They didn't count on what came next. Morning came slow, heavy with heat and silence. The kind of morning that made everything feel like it hadn't healed overnight, like the ghosts of the fire still hung in the sky. Eli stood at the edge of the porch, a mug of bitter coffee in one hand, his eyes on the trail. No one had come looking for the girls. That felt strange, wrong, and it stirred something deep in him that hadn't moved in a long time. Something like purpose. Inside, the house was too quiet. The girls were still asleep, or pretending to be. Doc Meeks had left at first light after checking May 1 last time. Her fever had broken, but the wound would take time. More than that, the shock in all 3 of them ran deeper than anything he could sew shut. Eli didn't know much about raising girls. He barely knew how to keep himself standing upright some days. But he knew what it meant to be left behind. He'd felt it once when he was 10 years old, on a muddy Arkansas road, watching the back of a wagon carrying his mother off to die at her sister's place. He never saw her again. Some kinds of pain just sit inside you for good. Looking at those girls, he saw echoes of that same kind of hollow. Later that morning, a creak at the door caught his ear. Lena stepped out, eyes shadowed, arms folded tight across her chest. Her long hair was matted and uneven, one braid half unraveled. She didn't say anything, just stared off at the horizon, where the burned wagon would still be a black smudge in the distance. Eli nodded to her. "Morning." She didn't answer, but she didn't go back inside either. That was something. "You want to tell me where y'all came from?" he asked, keeping his voice quiet. Lena hesitated, then shrugged, as if the effort to speak hurt more than staying silent. Finally, she said, "We were going to get married." Eli blinked. "You?" "No," she said. "Mama." He waited. "She wore white," Lena added after a long pause. "And she cried a lot, even before the fire." The way she said it, flat, factual, tightened something in Eli's chest. He crouched a bit to her level. "What about your daddy?" She shook her head. "He's dead. Mama was marrying a man named Judson." That name froze Eli in place. Judson Kane. He knew the name. A cattleman out of Nolan County with a mean streak. Stories followed him. About the way he treated his hired help. About how a neighbor's barn burned down a week after he refused to sell his land. But nothing ever stuck. Judson had money, friends in town, a preacher in his pocket, and a reputation for being untouchable. You remember anything else? Eli asked gently. Lena nodded. He said we didn't have to be part of it. Just needed to wear nice dresses. Mama told us not to make trouble. Her voice dropped, but May wouldn't stop crying. He didn't like that. Eli felt the urge to put a fist through his porch railing. Did he hurt her? He asked. Lena didn't answer. Inside, Josie stirred. She sat up blinking and looked around, instantly scanning the room like prey. When she spotted Eli, her body settled a little, but the fear never quite left her face. A knock came at the back door. Eli tensed and reached for the shotgun by the wood pile. But when he peeked out, he saw a familiar round face under a wide hat. Annie, he muttered and opened the door. Annie Clements was a neighbor from down the slope, 10 years older than Eli, the kind of woman who knew everyone's business before they did. She barged in with a basket of cornbread and broth, brushing dust off her sleeves. Thomas said you had kids up here, she began without ceremony. Then I heard about smoke on the East Ridge, and I put 2 and 2 together. You gonna tell me what happened? Eli let her in without answering. They're inside. She walked through the house like she owned it, but her eyes softened when she saw Josie huddled under the blanket and May unconscious in the bed. Her voice lowered. Dear God, what happened to them? Wagon fire, Eli said. Their mother was marrying Judson Kane. That stopped her cold. Kane? That bastard. Lena stepped in, hearing her. He said we ruined it. Said girls like us ruin things. Annie went to her knees in front of her. He's not a man, baby. He's something else. You hear me? Lena's eyes didn't change, but she didn't back away. Annie turned to Eli. If he's the one who did this, he'll be coming to clean it up. I know, Eli said. You gonna let the law handle it? Eli laughed under his breath. What law? Kane owns half the deputies between here and Abilene. Annie cursed under her breath. You need help, you come to me. I've got 3 brothers who don't answer to anyone but their conscience. Eli nodded. He was grateful, but he also knew that kind of help came with risk. Kane didn't leave things half done. Later, while Annie helped clean up the girls and feed them, Eli walked out to the barn. He needed to think. As he opened the stall door, Thomas stepped in. You really think Kane did it? The boy asked. Don't think. I know. Thomas scratched at his neck. You gonna tell Sheriff? Eli turned. Sheriff's the one who introduced Judson to the girl's mama. That silenced the boy. Eli sat on a bale of hay, staring at the dust motes dancing in the shaft of light cutting through the roof. I don't know what to do, he admitted. Thomas leaned against the wall. My ma used to say, if you see a child bleeding, you don't wait for permission. It hit Eli harder than it should have. He stood. We ain't waiting. That night, while the girls slept, May a little better, Josie curled in a nest of blankets, Lena sitting in the chair by the door again. Eli gathered supplies. Extra rounds. Rope. His old long-barreled rifle. He didn't say it aloud, but he knew Kane would be watching the roads. If he wanted answers, he'd have to ride straight to the source. But the risk wasn't just him now. There were 3 little girls asleep under his roof. Kim would want them gone. Not missing. Not hidden. Gone. He stared out into the night. The moon cast a pale silver glow across the fields. Somewhere in the dark, a wolf howled. Eli knew then this wasn't just about kindness or rescue. It was about making sure Kane never touched another girl again. He shut the door, turned the lock, and loaded the last shell into his rifle. Tomorrow he'd ride. The next day broke with soft gold light spreading over the hills, filtering gently through the cracks in Eli's shutters. Inside, the house was quiet but not heavy like before. The kind of quiet that comes after surviving something awful, tender, unsure but alive. May stirred first. Her eyelids fluttered open, slow and confused. Eli had just come in with a bowl of broth when he saw her fingers twitch against the quilt. She tried to sit up and winced, her small face scrunching from the pain. Eli rushed to her side, setting the bowl down. Easy now, he said softly. You're safe. You're my place. Her mouth moved, but her voice came out dry and cracked. Where, Mama? Eli hesitated. That pause was long enough for May to understand more than any words would have told her. Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry. She just nodded like something inside her had folded in half. Lena appeared behind him in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest again. She's not coming back, she said, matter of fact, but her voice had gone small. We don't talk about it. May needs rest. May turned her head toward her sister and blinked slowly. Did you shoot him? Lena didn't flinch. No, I missed. Eli felt like an intruder in that moment. These kids had already carried too much, lived through something most grown folks wouldn't survive. But he also knew they couldn't carry it alone. Not anymore. Drink what you can, Eli said, lifting the broth to May's lips. Let your belly get used to food again. She sipped, then a little more. Josie patted in after, hair sticking out in all directions, bare feet making no sound. She sat beside May and leaned her head against her shoulder. That small, simple touch, that need for closeness, brought something warm to Eli's chest. They didn't speak much through the morning. The girls were too used to silence. But as the hours passed, they began to let themselves take up space. Josie followed Eli outside to the chicken coop, trailing behind like a ghost. He let her collect the eggs. She didn't say a word but cracked the tiniest smile when one of the hens squawked and jumped away from her. You ever done this before? He asked. She shook her head. You're good at it, he said. She didn't reply, but her steps were a little lighter on the way back. Later that day, Annie returned, arms full of fresh laundry and a cast-iron pot of stew that smelled like home. She knelt beside May, brushing her hair gently, as if she were her own. Lena sat nearby, still clutching that empty pistol though her hands had stopped shaking. Annie looked over at Eli. She won't let go of it. She thinks it's the only thing keeping them alive, he said quietly. Annie nodded. Let her keep it. For now. When Annie left, Eli found Lena sitting on the front steps, pistol in her lap, watching the horizon. You know how to use it? He asked. She didn't answer. Come on, he said, motioning to the barn. Bring it. He walked her out to the side yard where a few old tin cans sat on the fence post. He handed her a smaller revolver, one that fit better in her hand. She looked at it like it was both a tool and a memory. Then she aimed, took a breath, and fired. The first shot missed. So did the second. But the third pinged clean through the can. Eli gave a soft grunt of approval. You've got a steady hand. She stared at the smoking can, breathing hard. I was aiming for his face. Eli didn't say anything. What could he? The words she carried didn't belong in Child's mouth. By evening, something had shifted. May asked for more stew. Josie climbed the apple tree beside the house and came down with 2 bruised ones she shared with Lena. The girls didn't laugh, not yet, but their shoulders began to loosen. They moved through the house like it belonged to them, at least a little. That night, Eli sat on the porch, feet propped on the rail. He hadn't lit a lamp, wanting the cool dark and the hush of the night. Lena came out and sat beside him. You ever been married? She asked. He looked at her sideways. No. Why not? He paused. Didn't find the right person, I guess. She nodded like she understood. Mama said if you find someone who doesn't hit you and lets you sleep warm, you should hold on. Eli took a deep breath, trying to push down the ache that rose in his chest. That's not how it's supposed to be. It is for some people, she said simply. The stars came out one by one, quiet witnesses to all the broken things in the world. Eli said, you girls, you can stay as long as you need. You don't have to earn it. You don't owe me anything. She didn't respond, but after a long moment, she leaned her shoulders slightly against his arm. Just enough to feel real. Just enough to mean she heard him. Over the next few days, they fell into a kind of rhythm. Eli showed the girls how to feed the calves and sweep out the barn. Josie took to brushing the horses, whispering to them like they were secrets. Lena helped stack firewood and, every evening, asked to shoot again. She never missed the can twice. May's wound healed slow but steady. She was still weak, still pale, but one morning she laughed. High and sudden, when Thomas tripped over a bucket while trying to impress her with his slingshot skills. Everyone in the yard froze. It was the first sound of joy since the fire. Even Lena turned and stared, as if she didn't recognize her own sister's voice anymore. Annie came by often, always with something in her hands: a warm loaf, a clean dress, a brush. One afternoon, she stayed long enough to tell Eli that Judson Kane had been seen in Abilene. "He's sniffing around the freight lines," she said. "Asked if anyone's seen 3 kids. Eli nodded, jaw tight. "He's not getting near them." Annie leaned in, eyes sharp. "I believe you, but he's not a man to give up, especially not when he's been humiliated." Eli looked toward the window, where the girls sat playing a slow game of checkers. May had fallen asleep on Josie's lap. "He's not just dangerous. He's proud. That's the worst kind." That night, he locked every door, every window, and he sat on the porch with his rifle across his knees. One evening, while Eli was bringing in buckets of water from the well, Josie came out barefoot, holding a scrap of paper. "Can you read this?" she asked. He took it gently. It was a letter burned around the edges. The writing was smudged, but he made out pieces. "To the good man who finds them, if they're still breathing, please don't give them back to Judson. My name was Ruth. I'm sorry. I tried." He stared at it, heart pounding. Josie said quietly, "Mama stuffed it in May's pocket before she pushed us off the wagon." Eli closed his eyes. The girls hadn't escaped. They'd been saved by a woman who knew she wouldn't make it. He crouched in front of Josie and touched her hand lightly. "Your mama was brave. She was scared," Josie said. "She said he'd kill us all if he caught us running. She was still brave." That night, the house felt different, a little more whole, like maybe it could hold the girls for longer than just a while. May sat in Eli's lap after supper, her head tucked under his chin. Josie leaned against his knee while Lena read from a book in a corner. He didn't know what the future looked like, whether Kane would come, whether this quiet peace would last. But right then, he had 3 girls safe under his roof. And for the first time in years, Eli Morgan felt like he belonged to something again. 2 weeks passed. The heat thickened. Flies buzzed louder. Shadows grew longer across the hills earlier each evening, and with them came a slow return of tension, like dust settling back into the cracks of the house. The kind of tension you can't see straight on, but you feel it when the air stops moving. Eli first noticed it when Lena stopped asking to shoot. She still held the pistol, still checked the windows each night, but she no longer said anything. She kept to herself more, stayed quiet through meals, and stood longer at the porch railings like she was waiting for someone to come out of the trees. Josie, once playful and curious, began walking with her shoulders hunched again, jumping whenever Buck snorted too loud or the wind slammed the door shut. May's laughter faded. She clung to her sisters more, refused to leave the house even to sit in the sun. It was like they all remembered something at the same time, something they tried to forget too soon. One afternoon, while Eli was chopping wood, he heard yelling from the house. He dropped the axe and ran. Inside, Lena stood in the kitchen shaking, her hands clenched at her sides. Josie sat on the floor, crying, and a broken bowl lay in pieces at their feet. She told May she wished Mama never married Judson. Josie cried. She said Mama made it worse. She did, Lena snapped. She knew what he was, and she still stood there in white. Josie sobbed harder. "You take that back." "I won't," Lena said, her voice sharp but trembling. Mama should have run before she lit the candle on that stupid cake. Eli stepped between them, voice firm. "Enough." But the girls didn't stop shaking. Eli didn't know how to fix this part. He could lock the doors, teach them to shoot, make sure Kane never stepped a boot on his land, but he couldn't guard them from what they carried inside. Later that evening, he found Lena in the barn. She sat on a hay bale, facing the wall, hugging her knees. Her eyes were red, but her cheeks were dry now. "You don't have to be strong all the time," he said gently. She didn't look at him. "Yes, I do. If I fall apart, they will too. You're still a kid. I wasn't when I aimed that gun." Eli walked in slow, sat a few feet away. "You know, I used to think if I could just forget things, I'd be fine. Push it down, ride out, move on. But it always comes back. In silence. In sleep. In voices that sound like people I lost. Lena looked at him for a long moment. Does it ever stop hurting? No, he said. But it stops running your life once you let it speak. She picked at a splinter on the post beside her. Josie still thinks Mama was good. She was, Eli said. And she made mistakes. Lena's lips trembled. She told me to hide with May. Told me to run. But I didn't listen. I went back for her. I thought I could help. Eli felt something twist inside him. What happened? Lena swallowed hard. Cain was yelling, pushing her. So we were cursed. Said she ruined his name. She tried to talk to him. She always tried to talk to him. Then the lantern hit the wagon wall. Flames went up fast. I pulled May out. I grabbed Josie. I didn't even look back to see if Mama made it. You think I was your fault? I didn't even try, she whispered. I didn't try. Eli put his hand over hers. You saved your sisters. That's the bravest thing anyone could have done. She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away. The next day brought more weight. Thomas rode in from town with news. Cain had filed papers claiming the girls were his by marriage. He was preparing to bring men, armed ones, to take them back. Eli didn't let the girls hear. Not yet. But Annie found out fast. They're not livestock, she snapped, slamming a pan on the counter. You let that man near them, and I'll put a pitchfork through his gut. I'm not letting him near them, Eli said. But the law might. Then to hell with the law. Annie's voice cracked, and she suddenly gripped the edge of the table, as if the weight of it all finally caught up with her. I see my mama in those girls. She stayed with a man who hit her, who called her filth, because no one told her she deserved better. Eli stepped closer. You did better. I waited too long, she whispered. That night, Eli packed saddlebags. Food, ammunition, money. He didn't know if Cain would come with a paper or with a rifle, but he wanted to be ready. He sat the girls down. Someone's coming for you, he said carefully, but I'm not letting them take you. Josie started to cry. May crawled onto his lap. Lena stood up and said, what if we left instead? What if we just ran again? Eli looked at her. Running won't stop him. It'll only leave you alone again. You don't understand, she said. You can't. Maybe not, Eli admitted. But I know this place. I know every inch of land, every trail, every shadow. If he comes, I'll see him before he gets close. She didn't look convinced, but she sat back down. That night, Eli sat in his chair with the rifle across his knees. Again, he watched the window for hours, thinking about Judson Cain, a man who smiled in church and beat women behind closed doors, a man who set fire to children and called it justice. Eli wasn't scared of dying, but the thought of those girls getting dragged back into Cain's hands made him want to burn the world. The next morning, Cain's men arrived. 2 of them, one tall, one wide, both wearing polished boots and smug grins. They didn't ride up like strangers. They rode up like owners. Eli met them at the fence, shotgun in hand. We're just here to collect what belongs to Mr. Cain, one said. They're not property, Eli said, voice calm. They're wards of a legal husband. He's filed for retrieval. The sheriff signed it. Sheriff can sign a tombstone too, Eli said, raising the barrel slightly. Back off my land. They didn't move, but they didn't test him either. One of them squinted toward the porch. Nice place to play house. But don't get attached. Cain's got deeper pockets than you've got bullets. Eli cocked the shotgun once. That was enough. They turned and rode off. Eli didn't move until the dust settled. When he walked back inside, Lena looked at him. He's not going to stop. I know. So what are we going to do? Eli looked at all 3 girls. We fight. Not with guns. Not yet. We fight with truth. I'm writing to Judge Lorne in the Capitol. He's honest and loud. If we tell what Cain did, and if you're ready to speak, we might have a chance. Lena looked uncertain. I don't want to talk about it. I get it. But if you don't, he'll twist the story into whatever suits him. That night, Lena walked out to the barn again, alone. Eli found her there, staring at the stars. I'll do it, she said. He nodded. I'm scared. So am I. She looked up. He killed her. Eli waited. I didn't say it before, because if I said it, it meant it was real. But I saw her. In the fire. She was screaming. Eli's throat tightened. She died, trying to protect you. Lena looked away, her shoulders shaking. Why didn't she leave sooner? Because she thought she had to stay. Thought it was her only way to give you girls something better. She was wrong. Yeah, Eli said. But she loved you. All the way to the end. Lena let out a long breath. I don't want to be like her. You're already more than she ever got the chance to be. In the days that followed, they prepared. Eli wrote to Judge Lorne. Annie gathered witnesses willing to speak of Cain's cruelty. The girls helped clean the house, prepare their story, and sew dresses that weren't burned or torn. They would not show up like victims. They would arrive like survivors. But each step forward brought fear. May started wetting the bed again. Josie clung to Eli's arm every time he saddled a horse. Lena barely slept, pacing at night. Eli found himself worn thin, trying to hold them together. One night, after another nightmare woke them all, May curled into his side and whispered, "If we tell them, and they don't believe us, what happens then?" Eli brushed the hair from her face. "Then we tell them louder, and I don't leave your side. Ever." The girls began to believe it. Not all at once, but in the way they stayed near him, the way they looked him in the eye, the way they started speaking about what happened without whispering. The past still haunted them. The pain still cut deep, but they weren't running anymore. They were standing, and standing meant something, even if it meant war. The sky was gray the morning they rode out, low and heavy like it might split open at any moment. Eli saddled Buck and packed his coat with the letter May's mother had written, copies of affidavits from townspeople Annie had gathered, and every ounce of truth he could carry. Lena sat behind him on the saddle, her chin lifted, face pale but set like stone. Josie and May rode in Annie's wagon, tucked between quilts, their eyes wide and silent as the distance swallowed the familiar hills behind them. They didn't speak much as the capital neared. Dust caked their boots, and Lena's fingers dug into Eli's sides with every bump in the road, but she didn't ask to stop. Not once. She stared straight ahead, like she was trying to see through time. The courthouse was tall and cold. Red stone, big white pillars out front. It towered over the streets like judgment itself. Eli felt small walking up those steps, even though he'd spent the last month building up to this. He glanced back, Josie clutching May's hand, Lena flanked by Annie. He gave him a small nod. Lena returned it, but her eyes never left the doors. Inside, Judge Lawrence sat behind a wide oak desk. His hair was gray neat, his eyes sharper than anyone Eli had ever met. He didn't smile when they entered, just motioned for them to sit. "I read your letters," he said. "What you're alleging is serious and dangerous." "I know," Eli said. "Judson Cain has friends, deep ones. I've heard stories about him for years, but no one's ever brought a child to testify, let alone 3. I'm not forcing them," Eli said. "But they asked to come." Judge Lorne turned to girls. His tone shifted, gentler but still honest. "You understand what speaking means? It means saying it out loud, in front of other people, in court. He'll be there. He'll hear you." Lena stepped forward. "He's heard me scream before. I think it's time he hears me speak." That was the moment. The crack in the wall she'd built since the fire. The judge sat back, lips pressed tight, then nodded slowly. All right. The hearing was set for the following day. That night, in a small and across from the courthouse, none of them could sleep. Eli stayed up pacing. May curled in bed between her sisters, whispering about her mother, how she used to hum while brushing their hair, how she cried in the corner after Judson slammed the door. Josie asked if they'd go to jail if the judge didn't believe them. "No," Eli said gently. "No matter what happens, you go home with me. And you don't go back to him. Not ever." They didn't ask how. They believed him. Or maybe they just needed to. Lena stood by the window most of the night. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But in the deep hours before dawn, Eli saw her reach in her coat pocket and hold the small burned letter from her mother. Her lips moved, not in prayer, just a whisper. I'm doing this for us. The courthouse was packed when they arrived. Word had spread. The Kane name drew eyes, and the idea of 3 orphan girls standing against him had stirred something ugly and curious in the town's gut. Men in suits, women whispering behind fans. Kane himself in a black vest and gold watch chain, sitting like he owned the courtroom. When the judge entered, silence fell. Call the first witness, he said. Eli spoke first, gave his statement, found the girls, took them in, saw the wounds. He didn't flinch when Kane's lawyer tried to twist his words, calling him a lonely man looking for a reason to feel needed, accusing him of planting ideas in traumatized children. Did I teach them fear? Eli asked. Or did he? Murmurs rose. The judge called for quiet. Then it was Lena's turn. She walked to the stand slow. Her hands were steady. Her voice cracked at first, but then leveled. She told him everything. The smell of burnt hair. The weight of her sister in her arms. Judson's voice telling her to shut May up, or he would. Her mama screaming. The fire. The pistol. How she pulled the trigger and missed because her hand was shaking. She ended with this. He called us nothing. But we're not. We're still here. And she's not because of him. The courtroom held its breath. Then Josie stepped up. Her testimony was shorter, more broken, but she told the judge about the bruises she saw on her mama's back. The night Kane dragged Lena out of bed for talking too loud. The time he held May's face too long when she spilled her juice. The way her mama begged him not to be angry at them. May sat in the crowd, holding Annie's hand. Too young to testify, too old to forget. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. This court believes the testimony of these girls. Their stories are consistent, detailed, and painful. The evidence provided confirms abuse. This court finds Judson Kane unfit for any form of guardianship. The room erupted. Kane shot up, shouting, but deputies held him back. The judge's gavel slammed. This hearing is adjourned. Eli turned to the girls. Lena didn't smile, but her eyes filled with tears. Josie buried her face in Eli's side and sobbed. May, for the first time, clapped her hands. Outside, the sky had cleared. The sun cut through the clouds like a promise. People lined the courthouse steps, but this time, they didn't look with pity. They looked with awe, with respect. Annie threw her arms around them all. It's done, she whispered. But Eli knew it wasn't. Not really. The bruises might fade, but the memories wouldn't. Healing wasn't quick, and it wasn't clean. That night, back at the inn, Lena climbed into bed beside May and whispered she'd be proud of us. Josie whispered, I think she saw. And when Eli finally lay down in the chair by the window, shotgun still near the door, just in case, Lena called out one last time before sleep found them all. Eli, yeah, you don't have to stay awake anymore. He smiled into the dark. Maybe I'll sleep too. Spring settled over the land slow and quiet, like someone laying a warm quilt over tired shoulders. The trees, once bare and brittle, began to green at the edges. Wildflowers bloomed along the fence lines. The scent of fresh earth hung in the air after every morning rain. And on the Morgan Ranch, laughter started to rise again, real laughter. It didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. A giggle when May dropped the pail and water splashed her feet. A quiet chuckle from Josie when Thomas made a fool of himself falling off the haystack. A low smile from Lena when she spotted Eli dozing off in the rocker with his hat pulled too low. They were safe now, not just in law, but in rhythm. The courthouse had stripped Kane of every right to the girls. He'd been fined, then quietly left town under the cloud of scandal and hushed voices. No one had seen him since. And yet, Eli still checked the doors every night, still kept a rifle near the porch, just in case. He didn't tell the girls that, but they knew. Still, time moved forward. Annie came by less often, only when invited. You've got your own house now, she told Lena one afternoon, handing her a jar of canned peaches. And it's running better than mine ever did. Josie learned to sew from Annie. She sat by the fire most evenings now, patching up old things and turning worn-out shirts into dolls' dresses. She was patient, steady, the way someone who's learned to watch quietly often is. And May started reading. She loved the way Eli sounded out words with her, slow and soft, like they were building something sacred between them one page at a time. Lena didn't call it home. Not at first, but she acted like it was. She took over chores, fed the chickens, helped Thomas herd the cattle, gave orders with a tone that reminded Eli so much of her mother. It stopped him cold sometimes. She watched over her sisters like always, but now she let them breathe too. She let them go a little farther out into the field before calling them back. Let them be kids just enough. One late afternoon, after supper and the sky already golden, Eli stood by the barn fixing a hinge when Lena came out holding 2 mugs of coffee. She handed him one without speaking, leaned against the post beside him. They stood that way for a long while, just watching the sun set. "She'd like it here," Lena said finally. He looked at her. "Your mother?" Lena nodded. She wanted a place that felt clean, a place with quiet. "I think this is what she dreamed of." Eli took a slow sip. "Then I'm glad you're here." She tilted her head. "You sure? You didn't ask for any of this." "No," he said, "but I didn't know how much I needed it either." She smiled, small, guarded but real. "I think she'd want us to stay. Not just because it's safe, but because we finally feel like we can stop running." Eli looked out over the land. "Then it's settled. You stay as long as you want. No end date. No rules but kindness." She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to. That night, they all sat around the fire. May had crawled into Eli's lap again, her head resting under his chin. Josie leaned against the hearth, her feet bare, her hands wrapped around a cup of warm milk. Lena sat in the rocker, one leg tucked up beneath her, a book open on her knees. It felt right, whole, not like some perfect painting, but something better, worn, tried, earned. Later, once the girls were asleep, Eli stepped out onto the porch. The stars were scattered across the sky, big and bright, like they always were out here. He rocked slow, the wood creaking beneath him. He wasn't a man used to needing things. But this warmth, this quiet, these 3 stubborn, wounded, remarkable girls had carved a place in him he never expected. Footsteps creaked behind him. Lena came out wrapped in a blanket, her hair damp from the bath. She stood beside him, looking out at the dark. "You don't have to sit guard anymore," she said. "I know, but you still do." He nodded. She glanced over. "Do you think people like us ever get normal?" Eli breathed out. "I don't know if normal's the right word, but peace? Yeah, I think that comes. Slowly, not all at once, like seasons." She stared ahead for a while, then turned to him. "You're the only person I ever believed when they said we'd be okay." He met her eyes. "That's because I wasn't trying to convince you. I was just telling you what I knew." She smiled faintly. "You think Mama sees us?" "I do," he said, "and I think she's proud." A long silence followed. Not heavy, not uncomfortable, just the kind that meant something had landed and didn't need to be spoken again. Eventually, Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. Just for a second, just enough. Then she stood upright and said goodnight. As the weeks went on, the ranch became theirs in ways Eli hadn't imagined. The girls painted the old barn door blue. May planted sunflowers. Josie learned how to saddle a horse and tie a lasso. Lena learned how to write letters and file them properly, insisting she'd one day keep all records for the ranch in perfect order. Spring melted into summer, and one day, without ceremony, Josie called Eli Pa in passing. Neither of them reacted, not right then. But later, he found himself sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall, trying to breathe through the lump in his throat. When May finally asked if they were going to stay forever, Eli just pulled her into his arms and said, "If you want to." They did. And Eli, who had never planned for a future, began to live like he had one. Not just one for himself, but for all of them. A quiet, steady kind of life, shaped not by blood, but by choice. By scars that no longer define them, and by the hands that reach for each other anyway. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs.